Okay, so I don't really know what to name this title. It's basically the other video that I was trying to um, share for background information. I've tried to actually share this video, this experience 2 times on my channel, but kind of, I don't really talk too much about it. I actually did talk about it once, and I actually talked about this. I never really actually talk about that part because I always feel like it's a little too controversial. But now that I think of it, I remember, the whole controversy I had last year when I was, well, people don't really know about this. I've mentioned it before, but I've said like how some swirlers and things of that nature had an issue with me on a specific um live or whatever over a year ago. And I always said, well, I was just talking about Rashida Strober. And um, I was talking about her, but I was also talking about an experience. And when I think of that, that might, I guess, considering where it was, it could seem differently. Um, but in this, oh, hi, Cherrylicious. Um, Hi, pretty brown girl Ari. But yeah, that was, I think, just situational. I think it had to do with a question I was asked or something of that nature. Um, but yeah, I did have a situation where I guess some people mentioned that I kind of shared this story, but I've never shared this story on my um live because like on my channels because it's like a situation that is a bit more, I guess, controversial. But anyway, I've always had kind of like this problem, but not extremely. And in this situation, it was to the point where it was very shocking. So, for example, pertaining to like black women, I've always had a situation where well, with black people, let's not just say black women, black people generally, my experience has always been where it would be confusing because starting off when I was younger, I always was under the impression that I was, what I am racially. And then when I kind of like was in an environment with other black people, they had a bit of a harder time with me in the sense of really recognizing me. And it was always like a kind of like a love hate situation going on because I mean, like, personally for me, I, me personally, I appreciate African features and, black people and things of that nature. That's just how I am. And I was because I was raised around black people, that's who I gravitated to, at least as far as phenotypically. And the worst part of it for me was that like sometimes I would experience situations such as colorism, for example. And there would be this kind of like thing where you would experience some issues that especially black men had with their skin tone and things of that nature, where like they would, you know, assert, certain complexions or certain races, or if you're mixed or something, that it was better. So like if you start talking about their ethnicity, it would be like more of a inward hate that they would kind of show towards themselves, like saying like I'm just black, or kind of like making a joke of their race, things of that nature. And more than that, it was like for me personally, it would always be like my biggest problem was with my identity trying to basically fit in, basically. And, you know, for me, I always felt like racially black people, especially, would, like, once, like, for one, when I was younger, I would have experiences where, oh, darn, oh, well, I'll make this short, I guess. I would have experiences where people would want to act like I was, like, ask me like questions about my ethnicity. And, some people would ask, like, in a very, how do you say it? Like, not a very polite way, asking, like, what race are you? Or things of that nature. And my problem would always be with this is odd, obviously, because it would be like, I'm the same thing, obviously. I'm black. And that's always racist to think I was. And it was almost like, I felt in my like upper teens like I would never really be accepted, as others, like I would never really feel acceptance from other Black American people generally. And for me, it was kind of like I would see people, my job, and things of that nature, where people who were like Black women would, in different settings, basically, associate with each other and align with each other. And I mean, like, sometimes I would see it with my mother. And, a lot of Black women don't even really, aren't really in the area. Like, my mother would live in areas where they're mostly white. So she didn't interact with a lot of Black people. But when she did, it always seemed like there was more of a, I guess you could say, sisterhood, so to speak. And, at least that kind of acknowledgement of, people being, their own, the same identity, basically. But with me, it's almost like I have always felt like the only thing that holds me together really with them is always like that I, like, by some, yes, but then others is almost like in a way where, like, you're not, white or any other race, therefore you're with us. But it's never like, you're really with us kind of thing. I didn't really pay attention too much to it when I was younger into a specific situation. For me, when I was younger, I honestly just wanted to be accepted, by Black women. And to me, I always notice like oh, there's a comment, sorry. Pretty brown girl Ari. I know this sounds crazy, but YouTube keeps using videos against me why I like black women, trying to say white men strictly only want one type of black woman. Um, yeah, I don't know. I tend to think that people want different things. So, I mean, anyway, I mean, there is people would probably say that because it appeals to a specific type of black woman, and maybe they think it's a majority of black women. Therefore, if it's a majority of black women, then um, it appeals to a lot of black women as opposed to appealing to the minority of black women. That doesn't mean that's true. It's just more of a matter of gearing it towards black women. But back to what I was saying, for me, I always just notice like with mixed women and light skinned women that it's easier to garner acceptance from like black men than black women for me, at least in my experience. And I always noticed that a lot of women that were mixed or light skinned or things of that nature would often try to say like would try to be um more of what you could say like a mammy or things of that nature. And they would get acceptance from both black men and black women through this route. For me, I never really had any preference towards black men. Well, so to speak, I mean like dark skinned black men. As a thing, I notice a lot of the time with like lighter skinned and mixed people, it tends to be where they are kind of like encouraged to like people who are different, like that are darker and are like fully black. Um, oh, there's another comment. I'm sorry. When I was in middle school, I wanted to have black female friends too, but they were too rude. They were rude to me and turned on me for no reason. That's what I'm going to talk about. Is specific situation where that happened to me as well. Um, I got in a fight with one of those black girls because she was rude. Yeah, I had a situation very similar to that. The closest I would date to black men would be a mixed man, but with a black mom and a white dad. Yeah, for me, I don't really care about the pairing like that. I mean, like I like mixed men, but I mean, they could have a white mom or a black mom. I don't really care about that too much. But my perception on, white mothers of mixed children, for me, I know a lot of people have a lot of negative feelings towards them. From my perspective, when I have interacted with them, they always seem like they want to pass the kids off um, as black as they can. Like, for example, they'll try and tell me how their kids are my color and therefore they're as black because their kids look as black as me, or they'll tell me that their kids look more black than me, or things like that. So then it's always like obviously if they're trying to tell how black their kids are, some white people actually like that their kids don't look like them because they don't want their kids to be white. That's why they're with people who are not white. People have different issues. Some people don't actually like being white. So, I mean, people have different things going on there. And I'm not really concerned about that because that's got nothing to do with me. So, it's not offensive to me really. And, but I understand some people point out that women, some like white women that are involved with black men can have some type of issue. And I've experienced that too, but usually what I experienced was from people who were with white people, but they were looking for validation from um, black men because they didn't get that validation from white men. Like there's one example. of one lady, and she preferred white men. She preferred white men, but I could tell in this in the environment she even like was kind of fond of one white guy or whatever. I don't think he was very fond of her because she was like overweight and like she was bigger than him, so she was pretty big. And she kind of like would use black men to make herself feel better, but she wouldn't be with them. So, I mean, like, some people are like that, but I don't really think people who have children with black men are really like that. But I do understand there is an aspect of people who do that. Anyway, um, I wouldn't get with a mixed guy with a black father. No, no thanks. My family members have done the same too. My mom showed me a Latina that's my skin tone. Yeah, yeah, I've had that happen too with a lady. She was kind of black, kind of. I think she was like black and white, and her she was black and white. No, she was black and white and Puerto Rican. Now that I think of it, so she was very mixed looking, but she was with a black person, and she would always point out how black her children were too. So yeah, they do that sometimes. It's just how it is. But back to what I was saying. Yeah, so for me, yeah, that was basically how I felt. I felt like a lot of the time I was treated like an outsider. And like in the only time they wouldn't want to keep me like is in a sense of like hate situation, like more so like, you know, what we don't want you not to like, we want you to feel like you're not better than us, which I never felt like I was better than anyone. Um, but that was the only way, like, basically, you're black, so you're with us because we don't want you to feel like you're better if you feel like you're another ethnic background or if you feel like you're mixed or something, which I never felt. I felt like I was a black woman. My mom taught me I was a black woman. She told me that my dad was black. I didn't find out my dad was mixed until I was 19. And so I've always identified as a black woman. But it was always like, you know, this weird teetering situation because like there'd be many times, like I said, where black people would ask, "What are you?" or "What race are you?" Not even "What are you mixed with?" They would always ask the other question, which was just really weird to me. And for me, it was like when I was around like 20, 21, I wanted to be so badly accepted, by black people. And I often tried to gravitate towards black people and tried to be accepted by them. I learned quickly that no matter what I did, I would never be accepted by black women. And, the reason why is because in the black community, among mammies, I'm not talking about divestors. I'm talking about, the general population of black mammies and other types of women. The way to be accepted as a black woman is being accepted, by black men, one. And then, like, outside of that, it's like I never was accepted, by black men because I always rejected them. Like, I had no attraction to them. I was never going to have any attraction to them. So it was always like that was not an option. But I always wanted to align with what I identified as a black woman, And that's why I sided with black women because I sided with identifying with them. And, I learned at about 20 with this specific incident that I'm going to be talking about that happened to me I don't know. Well, I actually did share this before, like I said. I shared this on a live a year ago, over a year ago. That live that I told you guys about, back in December, I told you about a live that I did. And it was about, I was talking about colorism in that video. I was talking about Rashida Strober, and I told I talked about this story that I experienced, but I didn't talk about it too extremely. Like I talked about it here and I talked about it there the most. So anyway, um for me, I've had some issues with colorism and dark-skinned black women. I told some people about, over a year ago. And that, you know, I shared it. I don't think, I shared it in any of my other videos. I don't really get too much into it either, that much, but this time I will. It's a problematic story, but it happened to me. So I had like a situation with two roommates, and I work with two of my roommates. And at one point, and there was one girl who we had like two people, who were LGBT. Oh, I didn't know there was other comments. Mixed guys with black fathers tend to be pro whack. What's whack? I don't know what that is. But back to what I was saying. Yeah, they were LGBT basically. One was transsexual, transgender, and the other was bisexual. Kind of bisexual, but she called herself straight, but she was bisexual. And um at that time it was okay actually, because I first had just a transgender roommate that I worked with. And then she had a friend that we worked with that was our roommate too for a while. And in that situation, oh, you meant pro black basically. Okay, I understand. Um, yeah, in that situation, it was pretty okay, but it was weird because it was like, as far as colorism, um, the person I was roommates with, the first one, was transgender, but she was mixed race. She was Pacific Islander and black, and she wasn't really around black people, but she was attracted to black men. I think she was attracted to both races or something like that. And she had a very negative view actually of black people. Um, and she was very open with it with me because I think because she was actually a very light skinned, maybe more Pacific Islander looking mixed race person. And like she was just more open with it with me because I guess she had thought because I was lighter skinned, she I guess thought maybe, I don't know, like she wasn't offending me or something of that nature. But I always was like, that's weird because I was like, you're black, so that's very confusing. I never experienced anything like that, but she was like that towards like black men. I mean, black women. And it was okay. I just was like, you're weird, something's wrong with you. But I was always like, Well, that's probably because I've always thought it had to do with her being transgender. I don't know. And after like some things I've watched with some people, I think, well, I don't know. Some people might be jealous of, other people. But anyway, the point was that was okay at that point. And then I had another roommate who was like she was like a brown skinned black girl. She was like me, honestly. She like had like a mixed grandparent or something like that. But she was black and she was darker than me, but she we got along just fine. Like it was just totally fine there. But then it all went wrong when we had somebody who we worked with who moved in with us later, and she had this whole problem really because she was also LGBT, she was lesbian, and the whole situation was okay with me, like I was okay with everyone, and you know I didn't have any problem with anyone, but the whole problem started with her because I think she was lesbian and she had some problem or whatever. And she was like, at first, like, she would be like more, I guess, to herself, but then she would like try to like she would kind of like be more of an annoyance basically. And she always had an issue with me being not LGBT because I'm like completely straight. And so it was always like that problem because I'm not, I don't have any interest in women. And so for me, it was always like I was always kind of like pointed out as someone who was different. And that was only like minorly. I never really even paid attention to it too extremely until later on. Well, like I said, there was this whole problem with the person being, lesbian because they were basically they were basically more like I said, there was more of like a, well, how do you say it? Like more of an argument, I guess you could say, about the fact that they were lesbian. Now, it wasn't specifically that they were lesbian, but like if they are talking about like things that I don't really appreciate, things like that, I will be more open that I think that stuff is gross. So what happened was there was a whole argument, right? At one point in the situation. And so the thing was, I was basically just like kind of like at that point, like trying to ignore her. And she kind of was like getting more upset and angry and like argumentative and stuff because because I was just not going to really engage in talking to her about stuff like that. And what happened was she went to my boss basically, and my boss is a dark skinned black woman, was, and tried to imply that I was not black and that I hated black people or I said something wrong to black people. Now, what was weird about this was it's like I didn't even know that people like that saw me as something that was completely another race in order to be like racist towards them. You know, I would have thought that that would be something that most other people would think was outlandish, um, something that would be considered like obviously a lie, you know. And for me, I mean, like, I I didn't even know how to really handle the situation because it was like I didn't even know anyone thought that or actually agreed with that because after that point the like my boss and stuff actually believed that I wasn't black and that I was actually racist to black people. And they were saying this just because of something I did like earlier that day and I was on the phone with my mother talking about what I ate and I was saying like I ate like fried chicken that day and they were saying like that I was racist or making a racist joke against black people. And to me, I mean like after that point, I was kind of like basically pushed out of being at my job and at my house it was like um really problematic, let's just say, because I mean like she just basically got me fired. So I had to move. And like for me, I just learned from that situation, I felt like I associated myself so much with these people and, you know, that they didn't even really see me as like them to the point where they could actually make up such a lie and actually get away with it. And honestly, I mean, like, I never even understood why someone would think to make up a lie like that, especially considering the conversation and the problems that we were having had nothing to do with race at all. Like the first problem that I had was the fact that she was trying to talk about like lesbian porn and like other issues like her girlfriend and things like that. I just didn't want her personal life affecting mine. Other than that, I didn't say anything about race. But anyway, it was just like kind of like the point that I had a problem with was all the other black people. It wasn't just my boss, but all the other people I work with and things of that nature actually sided with her, believed her. And it was like, how can you believe her when you know I'm a black person? But it was always like, for some reason, it was almost like in their head, I wasn't really, or I was just I don't know. It was just like weird. Like, how come you wouldn't realize? Obviously, how could I be racist against black people as if I'm not even black? And for me, I mean, like, I didn't even know like that that was even the problem for like I think like a week or so. So it was kind of like I didn't even know that that was the problem, but people kept like acting a different way towards me as if I was like hostile. Anyway, for me, it was kind of like a wake up call for me because Like before that would happen, I was always like asked, like I said, weird questions, like I said, about my race and like, what are you and things of that nature. And I always found that weird, but I never felt, I always thought like maybe it's just, I don't know, like maybe you're just being weird or funny or something, or maybe you're trying to make a joke or something. From my point of view, it's like really weird because it's like I'm the only one. I'm like, I've only been like raised to think from 0 to like 19 that I was black, and so I mean, like, I never was raised to think I was mixed or anything similar to that. And so it was like a shock to me that like a black person for some reason would, lie and say, I wasn't like black and that I was like against black people. And it made me feel like if they don't see me the way I see myself, then who am I really kidding? And so it's just like, I feel almost like, I did like have a situation where I would like have slight situations that were similar to that, but not to that extreme, basically. And I've like experienced other situations where people would seem to not like understand my ethnic background, or they would say, that I'm somehow fake or something of that nature. I've seen that like 2 or 3 times, especially online and stuff. Especially since I'm conservative, people always like to question you. One time, like I said, why would I, want to be accepted by people who only like use me as a way to put me down, but you don't, want to celebrate. Like, I always felt like, especially as far as beauty, and this applies to Black women in general, like, people always talk about how they prefer or like think certain features are beautiful and, ideal. And so, like, if you're seen as more attractive, a lot of Black people like to associate that with other races because it's almost like people don't want to see Black as beautiful. And I mean, sometimes I feel like, you know, there's really no embracement for being Black when in certain like spaces. And, that's really uncomfortable as a Black woman. But, you know, honestly, well, I have had like a few incidences where people, question, you know, my blackness in white spaces too. But mostly, I feel like often it's not really a big deal. Like I always felt like with white people, they were more accepting than, black people on that, honestly. Because it's always like, they kind of like see brown people as, people of color, not like them, you know. It's a lot easier. With black people, I've always noticed it's more so situations where at best I'm a self hater. And at worst, I'm not even seen as like black. Like sometimes people can think like I had that situation where people would get upset and act like, and this happens often, where people act like I'm trying to look lighter skinned, or I'm trying to make my nose look a certain way, or my features look a certain way, or something, And for me, it's always been like, I think that's more, it's better than not being seen as black, but then there's always a lot of vitriol with it, you know, than actually not even being seen as, a black person. It's very uncomfortable when, you've always felt and identified as black. And for me, I mean, like, that's a big part, of my problem usually. It's like there's never really an embracement of, one actually being a part of the black race when you're kind of like in my position, it seems like I don't know, I just never really felt like I was really appreciated as being black. At best, sometimes, like I said, with the whole hair shaming situation, it would always be like, you're supposed to have this hair, right? You're supposed to look like this, basically. So, like, you should look, more mixed race, basically. And, you should only have that image at best. But I mean, like, even then, I would always like that, at least, acknowledging to some extent. Then the experience I had, like I said, with my job when I was 20, where it was almost like, they didn't even recognize me as one of them, when, I mean, like, they knew I said I was black. I mean, like, if you would ask me. Oh, okay, welcome back, pretty brown girl, Ari. So that's just generally how I felt, basically. I just felt like, honestly, like, after that experience, like, why, would I try to pretend when it was almost like I said, in that situation, I was on good terms with everyone before that whole argument. And, I thought I was accepted as, other black women. And I, at the end, always realized, oh, I'm still not. I'm still on the outside of the situation when it comes to it, and it was just always more problematic for me to basically get past that, because it was always like, well, deep down, are you really accepting me, or are you still just thinking I'm nothing like you, even though I'm everything like you? Oh, and here's another comment. Tim Jenkins, we have all been blessed spend to spend a short amount of time on earth, so many things are issues that shouldn't be. Yeah, I understand that, but I'm just saying, like, for me, I'm just basically talking about a story that I've had a hard time basically sharing, honestly, because, like, I've always talked about colorism and talked about my issues with colorism existing, if it exists, and saying that it doesn't exist, and things of that nature. But I never really talk about my own experiences with the other Black women and other things that have happened personally to me, really. You know, I never do because I always felt like, for one, for a long time, I was really upset because I felt like a lot of dark skinned Black people had that strength over other Black people, basically, where, like, I felt like they had something over me where they could just basically lie and claim things that weren't true, and totally reject my identity, totally turn everything over and backwards on me, you know, and everyone would believe it, you know. And so for me, it was just like, I never really wanted to talk about it because it was like no one would really understand my problem too much because it was always like everybody always likes to see the lens through other people's um, opinion. And also, I think that a lot of other Black people who are darker skinned don't experience it from people like this because obviously they can't, get away with that. And so, I mean, like, if they can't get away with that and they don't understand that other people might do things like that to them, they might not understand, how some people manipulate situations. Oh, there's more comments. Good luck was trying to get acceptance from Black women. You Tim Jenkinson. I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to talk about them, just more so that it's sad that you have to deal with such issues. Yeah, I don't know. I try to think, honestly, that was a couple years ago. So for me, it's like, I've learned to not associate myself too much with them, basically, and to distance myself because the more I distance, but not in a hateful way, just distance in a protective way, kind of like it seems like things work out better than if I involve myself with people of that nature because, I'm letting my guard down and I could end up manipulated in that situation again. I don't want anything like that. If you have like a dispute or anything, you're going to make up stuff like that is a little too extreme. Oh, you kind of sound like Cynthia G. I kind of think we look alike too. But anyway, I'm obviously not her. You can see my videos with my face. Um, Tim and Jenkinson. It's very sad that's how people decided to judge you, as you seem like a very kind and intelligent person. They missed out on seeing that side of you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tim Jenkinson. Yeah, I don't know. I think honestly, we did kind of get to know each other, but the problem was, like I said, was the whole problem of her being like inappropriate and trying to cover it up with something else, you know. Well, it's just weirder, honestly, because like my ex roommate, she kind of witnessed an experience that she was problematic. I think because of her predisposition in the situation, she didn't care really. But I think more than that was the fact of, not just that, but the aspect of, because before the whole argument, you could also tell, like I said, among my roommates, it was kind of like I was, I guess you could say, the only lighter skinned cisgender female. My other roommate, like I said, was transgender, and she was really light skinned, but she was transgender. So I think maybe there might have been a problem beforehand that I never really paid attention to. I kind of just ignored it. Like, for example, there were telltale signs like that the other roommate, the one that made up the lie, would assume things about me that would imply that she thought I was, I guess, mixed or something. Like my hair, for example, which was at the time like braided up, so you couldn't really see the texture or anything. And she would assume like what my hair was when it wasn't really of that type. I'm a black person, honestly. I mean, like my hair doesn't lie. Um, but yeah, for me, I just like noticed from my like experience, I'm more, I guess, perceptive of those situations now. And I mean, like, I get similar comments now, and I understand, like, you know, a lot of Black women often, for me, tend to see me as different. And, I might not see myself as different, and I might just, accept like my blackness and see myself as just black. But that's not going to change how other people are going to see me. So I kind of act accordingly. Not saying though that that's just, based off race, because it's not. Honestly, like that's this story is about complexion, phenotype, and things of that nature. But like my mother, for example, and some experiences with her, there are some issues there, but it's not off of like you're not a black woman. It's not a rejection of her blackness. It's more so just like culture and class. So, yeah, I just think in the end, there's a lot of people who, they try to claim like unity, but then at the same time, the only unity that some people want to include is like a sense of, in a way, like we're all bad or we're all low. Nobody's, better than anyone else, which blackness isn't low at all. I think blackness is very beautiful and great, you know, to think of it in a way where like we're all, you're not better than me kind of thing. Like white people are better than black people when they're not, you know. To me, I mean, like with unity, the way I would prefer it to be is just more so like we're all black and we're all, you know, perfect and beautiful in our blackness, you know, and actually having pride in being black, I guess that's why I did my DNA test so then I could actually find out what my, African heritage is. So then I could actually embrace the type of African heritage I have. And I mean, I like that I did that, but at the same time that actually had its own problems. But I'm not going to talk about that in this video too much, I guess. Um, I think I've said a few things, with Nigerian people. Some Nigerian people seem a little less accepting, but I think that's just a tribal difference. Because I've seen some Nigerian people who are very accepting. So I wouldn't just make an assumption on all of them or anything of that nature. But I do love their culture, especially the House of Fulani and the Igbo, because my mother's family comes from Imo, Nigeria, and that's mainly ethnically Igbo, I believe. So yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to basically share this video and share my experiences because I never really was able to get this story out. So I mean, I did in small bits, but basically that's my reason for why I kind of like stay distant from black women, but at the same time, you know, I do have an identity that is that of a black woman, and I will always identify as a black woman. So yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching though. Have a great day. Bye.